Hi everybody, this is Mandy with Mandy's Adventures. I am so excited about today. I am standing in the Holiday Village Mall in Havre, Montana. We get to take our own special tour with Emily at the Earl Clack Museum. She is going to tell us some history and things about the museum, and I am going to take you on the adventure with me. Let's go.
Hello, my name is Emily Mayer. I am the manager of the Clack Museum and Chu'gn Buffalo Jump. I was born and raised in Havre, Montana, and I like to call myself Havre and Hill County's local historian. So we will go ahead and we'll start on our tour of the museum. We start off at the beginning, which is dinosaurs. The Clack Museum is one of the original members of the Montana Dinosaur Trail, which is a trail of museums that have wonderful specimens in their collections. And our dinosaur happens to be the Lambiosaur. They're found quite frequently in the area. It's a friendly dinosaur. It's not going to eat you. They like to eat plants. So we have a wonderful casting of a Lambiosaur skull. It's a species of duckbill dinosaur. And to the right is a casting of the Myosara, which is the state dinosaur. It means good mother lizard, also another friendly dinosaur found in the area.
It kind of looks like a lizard, you know, with its frame. Wow.
And up in the corner here we have Chomper. He's an Albertosaurus. They had a naming contest and the kids of course named him, so
and I wonder why they named him Chopper. Oh my God.
He's an Albertosaurus. He's a cousin of T-Rex, and yeah, he's not very nice. He will eat you.
Yes, he's like he's looking at you. Okay, moving on, Emily.
And here we have some very interesting fossils in our collection now. This nest of eggs is a casting of a nest of Lambiosaur eggs found in the area by paleontologist Vicki Klaus. The original itself is down in the Museum of the Rockies in Bozeman, also another museum on the Dinosaur Trail. But to the right are authentic Lambiosaur eggs, fossilized eggs found in the area. Are a variety of Lambiosaur fossils and Albertosaurus teeth and that sort of thing, and that is indeed an artist's rendition of the Lambiosaur taking care of its eggs. We have a baby Lambiosaur fossil here that was found in the area. The skull itself is up in Canada being researched. The only specimen that we have in our collection that is not found in the area is the Stygimoloch casting. That is a skull of a Stygimoloch, which is also a friendly dinosaur. It eats plants. But that we won in a contest. We sold the most Dinosaur Trail passports.
Wow.
One year, and that was the prize.
Wow.
The Dinosaur Trail, you buy a passport, and each museum on the Dinosaur Trail has its own stamp and its own dinosaur. And it's just this neat little booklet that you buy for $5. You have 5 years to complete the Dinosaur Trail to go on all the museums. You send in the booklet, they send you a special, gold foil stamp, and then you get a free t-shirt. So just kind of a free plug for the Dinosaur Trail people. It's wildly popular, especially this year. In June alone, we had stamped 76 passports.
And where can you purchase these passports? At any museum that is on the Dinosaur Trail?
Yes, any museum on the Dinosaur Trail has the passports available for sale, including the Clack Museum. A tour of Chu'gn Buffalo Jump, which is located behind the Holiday Village Mall. It's a 2,000-year-old bison kill site, and it's very interesting. It's the only one like it on the North American continent. You're not going to go anywhere else and find what you see at our location, because you can go into the archaeological digs, which are covered with metal buildings, and literally see the layers of history over 2,000 years. And of course, we go into the tribes that have lived here for centuries. So we've got a lot of artifacts of Cree and Chippewa, in the area. One of my personal favorite pieces is this hide, and it's made by Cree,
Wow.
named Mike Gopher in 1930, and this is one of my favorites. I just think this is absolutely beautiful. And then we have a Cree Bible, just a Bible that's been translated into the Cree language. Wow. So I think that's just really neat. And one of the things that just makes me so happy is when, I read stories that they're wanting to preserve the language and preserve the traditions and the culture. And I think that's very, very important to our American history, that everybody preserve the old ways.
Yes.
Diorama that was created by a renowned sculptor Bob Scriber. It's depicting the Battle of the Bear Paws, which is, as you know, 16 miles south of Chinook, Montana. Very, to me, it's a very spiritual place. You don't go I never go, on a walk of the Bear Paw battlefield without feeling,
Yes,
something very, very different, something very, very special and sacred.
Yep.
And I've been out.
I agree.
And I've been out in windy, cold weather when they're doing the annual commemoration, when the descendants come, with the Nez Perce tribe and things like that. And that's something I would highly recommend people participate at least once. If you're going to live up here, go see it once and participate. It's really quite moving. 14, 15 years ago, some of them brought their Appaloosas with them, their horses.
Yeah.
And then from, the tribes that have lived here for thousands of years, we go into Fort Assiniboine. Now, Fort Assiniboine was a fort that was established in 1879, about 6 miles south of Havre. And as you can see, we've got a diorama here. Again, this is also not exactly the way the buildings were set up out at Fort Assiniboine, but it's a very, very good depiction. In fact, Gary Wilson, the late Gary Wilson, was always wanting to take this glass cover off and go in and move those little buildings around so that they're a more accurate description, but unfortunately he didn't get a chance to do so. We lost Gary a few years ago, which I think is still a tragedy, because he was such a character. We miss Gary, and his love for Fort Assiniboine, which, by the way, the Clack Museum is a contact point for Fort Assiniboine tours. So if you call the number, it's going to come here to the Clack Museum. And in the summertime, they do tours 7 days a week. Again, it was established in 1879 and it was decommissioned in 1911. Here we've got a diorama here of some of the artifacts that were found out at Fort Assiniboine or were donated to us that were located out at Fort Assiniboine at one time. Fort Assiniboine is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, so that's a very special designation. And then over here is just kind of a mock-up of what a barracks would have looked like. Now, this is how the enlisted men would have lived. Now, the picture in the back is not of Fort Assiniboine. I believe it's Fort Keogh over by Miles City. But you can see, though, that in the corner here that there are African-American soldiers, the Buffalo Soldiers, sitting, I guess, having a conversation or writing letters home or what have you. And Fort Assiniboine was one of the western forts that had the Buffalo Soldiers stationed at it. The code in there is Philip Jones, Sergeant Philip Jones, also, again, a Buffalo Soldier. And that's how Havre got a fairly sizable African-American population for a town its size. A lot of the Buffalo Soldiers, when their tour of duty was over at Fort Assiniboine, chose to stay in Havre. and they had their own, community, and they had their very own church and their own clubs and things like that. I believe Philip Jones left Havre for a while, but when he was in the hospital in Washington, D.C., poor guy, basically on his deathbed, he said he wanted to come back.
Okay.
But Sergeant Jones wanted to come back to Havre, so he is interred here at our cemetery. So and that's something that I personally, I have a small business that's separate from the museum, and I've had that for, 15, a little over 15 years now. And I do tours of Fort Assiniboine, or I do tours of the cemeteries, and I like to do themed tours, and one of the tours I would like to do is featuring the African Americans that are interred up at the cemetery, which there are quite a number of them.
That would
and
be
people
neat.
don't know about them. So,
yes.
And here is a bell that was out at Fort Assiniboine. It was in this schoolhouse. It was the building served as a chapel and a school. So everybody, went to services on Sunday, and then during the weekday, the children of the soldiers that were stationed out at Fort Assiniboine would go to school. We kind of go into as well, not a whole lot, but kind of go into is the early fur trade in Montana and in the area. Of course, every hunter knows that this area is rich in wildlife. So people would come here and they would hunt the wildlife not only for food, but for their pelts, their fur. Now this is kind of a little depiction of the formation of Havre. Havre got its start. It was kind of a little tent settlement until the railroad got here in 1887. And after the railroad got here, and especially after it was made a division point, that's when the permanent buildings started to show up. The tents, the shops that were set up in canvas tents are now turning into, wood frame buildings, and people are building houses. And there's a little tiny paragraph in the River Press, which is the newspaper at Fort Benton, that said 2 men had a very positive and optimistic outlook on Havre's future because they're building permanent homes in Havre. The first 2 permanent homes in Havre. One was a man by the name of Simon Pepin, who is considered the founder of Havre because of all of his, contributions. I mean, his ranch and his businesses and bringing in his families and getting them set up and everything. I mean, he was a real go-getter. And then the other man was my great-great-grandfather, John Mayer.
Oh.
Building a permanent house in Havre, Montana. So that's really special.
Wow.
Because that's what brought the Mayer side of the family was the railroad.
Neat.
On a tour of Havre beneath the streets, people learn about the Great Fire of 1904 and how it damaged and destroyed a good portion of the business district. Didn't get all of it, but it got a good portion of it. And what the people up in this area had to do to survive until they could rebuild again. And then the city council said, well, no, you can't just have wood frame structures anymore in downtown Havre. They have to be built out of stone or concrete or brick or something other than only wood because of the fire danger. So that's why there are so many brick buildings in downtown Havre.
Interesting.
Is because of that.
Yeah.
Which I think, I don't know, wood frame buildings are nice, but brick buildings are pretty too, especially considering we did have a brickyard at one time.
Yep.
Yep,
right there, Havre.
Yep, Havre bricks. Just a small depiction of schools in the area. Hill County used to have, I think we counted upwards of 80 different little tiny schools at one time, and there are more of them. And also part of the Clack Museum's collection are the Homestead Shack and the antique farm equipment that was donated by the Tow family of Laredo, and the Log Faber Schoolhouse that's up on the fairgrounds. That still belongs to the museum, and every now and then we do programming and things like that there. So we've got a quilt that was made by Mrs. McCullough, and her husband was out out at Fort Assiniboine. So
Look at
yeah,
that.
he was pretty important to not only American history but world history as well. Now Fort Assiniboine is part of the International Old Forts Trail. The first three forts were Fort Benton, Fort Assiniboine, and Fort Walsh up by Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. And it was an international supply trail because forts in the western United States and the western part of Canada could not depend on their capital cities for supplies. Ottawa's too far away, and Washington, D.C. is even further. So, we can't depend on them, so we have to depend on each other. And, they just kind of adopted what, Native American tribes have been doing for thousands of years. You don't recognize you've got a border. I mean, everybody knows whose land that is.
Right.
They don't need a border to tell,
Right.
What from what. So, anyhow, they supplied each other with trade goods and foods and things like that. And then it wasn't just those three forts. It was, it went up to Fort Battleford, which is way up there in Saskatchewan. If you don't stop, it's 7 hours. But it's so pretty up there. Oh gosh, it's lovely. And also Wood Mountain, which is up in Saskatchewan. And then there's also Fort Macleod, Fort Whoop-Up, and Fort Calgary in Alberta. So it's really neat. So if anybody is interested, we do have brochures that tell you about the Old Forts Trail and the different forts that are on it. In 1909, the United States Congress rewrote or amended the Homestead Act of 1862 and increased the number of acreage for people to prove up on. And over time, not only that, but it decreased the amount of time it took to prove up. As soon as a person proved up on their homestead, then they got deed to it free and clear, and they could do with it whatever they pleased. They could keep it, they could sell it, they could expand on it, whatever it is that they wanted to do. We've got two depictions of a homestead here, one in the mountains and one on the prairie, and quite frankly, this one on the prairie is a much more common depiction of what homestead life would have been like for the people, not only here but everywhere. And we've got another. This is another Bob Scriber diorama. Again, it's depicting homestead in the Bear Paws, and it's actually the Dumas Ranch in the Bear Paw Mountains. Or the background scene is taken from that. I don't know that the little homestead was, but I do know that the background painting is.
Wow.
Can be seen from the Dumas Ranch.
Lovely.
We get into ranching. One of the things that people don't realize is Hill County started off with sheep. We didn't start off with cattle. They had the good sense to switch over to cattle, but we started off with sheep, and you can see the numbers. But as you can see, there's a picture here of sheep, being brought into the city of Havre, and they're just, you can't get anywhere in the streets of Havre because they're just covered with sheep. Here we have a Jim Pasma diorama of cattle ranching, more or less kind of a roundup of the different cattle for your branding and that sort of thing, so you can fatten them up and sell them. When you've got cowboys, you've got rodeos. And we had the Great Northern Montana Stampede that was organized by, our most beloved criminal, Long George Francis. And it was part of the Stampede circuit that also included the Last Chance Stampede down in Helena. It included the Calgary Stampede up in Alberta, and it also included the Stampede over in Portland, Oregon, that are all still going. Unfortunately, ours is not going. It was a going thing for a time, though, but unfortunately, the organizers, they went into bankruptcy, and that ended that.
Oh.
But we do have rodeos, of course, up here. It's part of our Western culture.
Right.
So anyhow, it's a depiction. And the neat thing is this was done by, again, Jim Pasma, who is a local sculptor, local artist. And every one of those people in the stands and on the rodeo grounds themselves are of actual people.
Wow.
They're actual people.
Oh, wow.
They had my favorite, and there are two of them that are my favorite. There's a lady holding the black horse in the corner there. That's a depiction of Marie Gibson, and she is our reigning bronc queen.
Wow.
She rode the bucking broncos. In fact, she got her start with her neighbor, who was Long George Francis, and he got her started doing rodeos. And she performed all over the United States, Canada, England, and she would perform for the then Prince of Wales, who later became the King of England.
Wow.
And he thought so highly of her that he gave her a horse and a pin, and unfortunately she died doing what she loved most. She was just got done with her ride on a bronco, and her pickup man went to go get her, and the bronco ran into the horse and knocked her over, and the horse is still jumping up and down, and unfortunately he landed on her head. She is buried here, and I include her on my Interesting Hill County Women, because her story is incredibly, it's just a wonderful, wonderful story. What a strong woman.
No kidding.
And, but no, it's just absolutely wonderful lady. And the second person that I really like in this kind of a favorite is the African American lady smoking the cigar. That's Ma Plaus. Her real name was Alice Pleasant. Her husband was stationed out at Fort Assiniboine, and when his tour of duty ended, then they stayed in Havre, and she was a well-known Havre figure. Both sides of my family knew her. My mom's side of the family knew her, and my dad's side of the family knew her, and both of them had very interesting stories to tell.
She looks like she would be a character.
She was a character. She would go to the bars and she would, get her drinks and stuff like that, and she'd smoke her cigars, and sometimes, well, she kind of had a mouth on her, and sometimes she'd get more than just a little mouthy, and they'd bounce her out of the bar and stuff like that. So she's being very polite.
So did she die here too?
Yes, she did. She passed away, I think, in 1934 or 1935, and she is interred here.
Wow.
At the Calvary Cemetery, the Catholic cemetery.
Yep.
This gentleman here with the cross, that is a depiction of Reverend Leonard Chrysler, who was the Episcopalian minister, and he was called the orator of the great outdoors because of his, giving sermons outside and stuff. Havre wasn't his only place, but it was his main place to deliver his sermons, and of course running the church. My Interesting Hill County Women tour does cover everything from naughty to nice.
Okay.
So,
and I will leave information about that in my description box, and people that can get a hold of you.
Sure.
Or because you really know your knowledge of everything, Emily.
I try.
Oh my gosh, I could seriously sit here all day and just listen to you.
Oh, I could talk all day. Yeah, I've been known to do that.
I love it.
People have been known to stay an extra night because I talk too much.
I love it. That is, you are perfect for this museum. I'm telling you.
Well, thank you. I like hearing that. Again, we've got some stuff with Long George Francis. He was convicted of horse thievery and was supposed to serve time in prison and never did. He was told to turn himself in. He said, yeah, I'll go ahead and turn myself in. But then he went to go deliver Christmas presents for his girlfriend. And the students she was teaching, she taught school up by Simpson. And unfortunately, he got in a car wreck and he got a broken, and he died. He didn't make it. But anyhow, never served a day for stealing that horse. But a lot of people really liked him. I mean, he was tall, and he was good looking. I mean, what's not to like about the guy? I mean, he just had this personality that everybody liked him, but he just had this bad habit of taking off with animals that weren't his.
Yes.
So anyhow, we've got his arrest, his warrant, and that sort of thing. And not only was he, criminal, but at one time he was constable, law enforcement in Havre. So, I mean, and of course, good friend George Bickle. I mean, Long George Francis and George Bickle were good friends, and George Bickle is a relative of mine. A family member of his married Pagreba, who was my great grandmother's sister.
Wow.
So yeah, again, when you live in towns like this and you're here for 7-8 generations.
Wow.
These things just, I mean, yeah, you're kind of related to a lot of people. So I say, be careful who you talk about in Havre, Montana, because you're probably talking about somebody's relative.
And when I was I was with Mary at Havre Beneath the Streets, and we did a vlog, and they have.
Right.
She was talking about him down there and had some of his saddles down there.
Yeah, they have a saddle.
Yeah.
And that saddle is really neat because you can see how tall the guy was. Cause his stirrups are so much, long down there, a lot farther than someone like me.
And that's what she said. She goes, and guess how he died? And I go, from stealing somebody's horse. She said, no, he got shot. He got in a car accident. And I'm like, seriously? And it was like, wow. Who knew?
And funny thing is his girlfriend that he was going to go see, and those children, my grandmother was one of those children.
Wow.
So again, this stuff, it all comes back if you've been here for a while.
Yes, no kidding.
Another thing that we talk about, or that we have here too, and this is something that I really want to improve when we get to our new museum site, is coal mining. And that's something a lot of people don't know about here. This area up here is rich in coal deposits, but the problem is it's not good coal. It's coal, it burns, but this isn't the type of coal that people would want for like a power plant or anything else like that. This was something that was used by the homesteaders, and this is what brought another part of my family to the area. My great-grandfather, Frank Bunton, was a coal miner, and so we had a coal mine up here, and then he went into homesteading and bootlegging during Prohibition. So anyhow, this is the one of the coal mines that was in the area. But of course, then people find natural gas, and then they harness the technology to use natural gas, and we're also rich in natural gas up here. So, which is why so many people up here have natural gas to heat their water heaters or their furnaces or their cook stoves.
Okay.
And of course, here we're kind of going into the business district of Havre. We've got kind of a representation of the Lou Lucky Company, who was in business for a little over 50 years, and then they shut the store down. It's where Norman's is today. That's where the Lou Lucky Company used to be. And then we also have some things of Buttrey's, F.A. Buttrey's. And we also, not only did he have Buttrey's department store, he also had the first radio station in Montana. And we have the one of the original licenses there on the wall, which I think is really neat. And then we also have a little jewelry bench that was donated to us by the family of, I can't remember his first, George Johnson. His children donated that to us. And jewelry stores were quite common in communities back then because you needed, especially if you had the railroad coming through, because you needed to have your watch repaired. And every jeweler had to be skilled in watch repair because especially conductors, their watch was part of them as their fingers. I mean, their stopwatch was incredibly important.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because everything had to be done on time. Something happened, you had to record the time, and that time needed to be accurate. So again, we've got that kind of depiction here. A few hats and things, Buttrey's hat boxes and that sort of thing. A lot of people think that Buttrey's was a grocery store, and it did have groceries, but that wasn't the only thing that they offered. They had clothing, they had sporting goods, they had furniture, they had a tea room, they had a place where you could go have coffee and pie. A lot of people remember that to this day, the coffee and pie that was served in the basement of Buttrey's, and that's of course where the atrium is today. That was Buttrey's department store. And then it went from the department store to groceries, I think in the 1960s when it was acquired by the Jewel Corporation. And then we have a representation of the women in Hale County's history. The dolls were made by a local artist named Bernice Payette. That was her thing. And so she would make dolls representing different women in Havre society, like Jane Boucher Buttrey and Marion Broadwater Coeur. And Mrs. Clack, whose husband, at the museum is named after the Clack family, Mr. and Mrs. Clack. So just kind of a representation of the society women in Havre.
Mm-hmm.
Over here we have honoring our military, World War I to World War II. And this is something, again, I would like to expand on when we get into our new museum site. For those that don't know, the Clack Museum Foundation, which is the 501c3 fundraising arm for the Clack Museum and the Chu'gn Buffalo Jump, acquired a building in downtown Havre, the old Anderson Wholesale building. And we will be moving down there eventually. I'm not exactly sure when, but it's getting closer and closer. So when we get into that location and as time goes on, we'll be able to really start expanding our exhibits, which I think is wonderful.
Nice.
Have nurses' uniform there in the corner. Again, of course, for the Red Cross, but also incredibly important, taking care of the wounded, on the battlefields. And another thing I would like to see is, keeping our traditions and our culture and our heritage alive. Mm-hmm. I think it would be really neat to have, an area where people could, work on things like woodworking or leatherworking or beadworking or, embroidery or, some sort of crafty thing that is part of the history and heritage of this area, or cooking, doing some demonstrations and things like that. Some of those recipes look pretty good, and other ones, maybe that might not be so good. But anyhow, I just think that there's so many possibilities with this museum, and we're awfully proud of it. There is just so much, and it's so diverse, and it's important that each entity have its own way of showing its contribution to the forming of our community and our heritage.
And we are so lucky to have this in Havre, Montana, a small city.
Yes, we are. One of the things too is Havre is so lucky because we have different sites that have different things, and each one complements the other. It doesn't compete.
Yep.
It complements. This particular museum is Hill County, and it's featuring pretty much Havre and the surrounding area. The Rudyard Depot Museum does a fabulous job getting the other, quaint little communities in Hill County represented. They've done a fabulous job. And so the two museums complement each other. Of course, again, Chu'gn is part of the Clack Museum, so we have that in our collection, as well as the Homestead Shack and the schoolhouse and the tow farm equipment that are still on the fairgrounds, and the caboose too. So, we've got that, and then Havre Beneath the Streets focuses a lot on the business area. Again, that complements. That's depicting things that we don't have the space here to do anything with.
Right.
So again, we complement each other. And then, of course, the tours that I do through my my business, Havre Historic Tours and more. I focus on the homes a lot. I do 3 different tours of the historic district, and one of the downtown area. Although I'm working on a second because there's only so much. We've got a big downtown area. And then I also do several tours of the cemeteries. So, it's just getting each one of these places just complements each other, I think, and I think that's really good. The only thing I wish Havre, this area would get is I really wish Rocky Boy had its own museum so that the Chippewa and the Cree can tell their story in their own words.
Yes.
And we have some, we have artifacts and beadworks and things here, which is wonderful because it needs to be here. Their story needs to be told, but who better to do it than the tribal members themselves?
Yes.
So I really hope someday Rocky Boy is able to get its own museum. So and then I really I feel kind of strong about that, because I think their culture, their heritage, their traditions are so important. So,
Yep.
but anyhow, that's pretty much the Clack Museum in a nutshell, other than we do have a small gift shop with some local history books and some postcards and things like that. Oh, another thing I want to tell you about our dinosaur. There was a discovery here a couple years ago, or maybe more than a couple years ago, of a new species of Ankylosaur, the one with the armor. And the big tail, and it was found just north of Havre here, and they named it Zool after the monster that was on Ghostbusters.
Yes.
And he's part of the Royal Ontario Museum up in Ottawa, and we're getting a casting of the skull and the tail.
Wow.
And so when we get that, then we want to have a big presentation and stuff like that. So
definitely
keep your eye out for that. But that's something that's really neat, because again, history is always being discovered up here or rediscovered, and it's just amazing what you can find up here and enjoy and learn from and study, and then take that information and then pass that on to other people, so that they learn and are able to appreciate that. So come and check us out. Admission is free at this location. It'll probably change once we get down to our new museum, because we'll have a building that we need to support. But we do take donations, and come and see us anytime.
Yep. So. And, Emily, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come in and record and have you here taking us on a tour. My gosh, you was just awesome. I have seriously learned a lot today, and just thank you for your time, and just that's the idea of doing this, is to bring people into a community, or maybe someone is looking at this like, oh my gosh, she's talking about my relative, and give you a call. And because I know that is where your heart is to help people and with that history. So I just want to thank you so much for just being here, allowing me in here to record, and just sharing your knowledge with us. It's just fascinating and just awesome. And I'm just so thankful for that. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. There you have it, the Earl Clack Museum here in Havre, Montana. Remember, if you come to Havre, stop at the Holiday Village Mall, which is right off of Highway 2. Go to the back of the mall, and right in the corner is the Earl Clack Museum. There seriously is something for everybody. There is so much history hidden inside this room. I want to thank Emily. Emily, thank you so much for taking us here on this tour, and just the knowledge that you have and all the names that you have. You truly are a treasure to the town of Havre, Montana. Seriously, guys, this is definitely a place to be, and I cannot wait for the future, for when they do move into their new building and how much bigger it is going to be. I'm gonna have to come back. So, on that note, until we meet again, take care, love one another, and I will see you soon. And remember, if you liked this vlog, please give it a big thumbs up. Lets me know that you like what I'm doing, and don't forget to subscribe so you can see future videos. Until then, I'll see you soon. Bye.